issues. I'm going to call our meeting to order. This is the call to order the City Council Transportation, Energy and Utilities Committee at around 5:32. And I would entertain a motion on our agenda.
I would move the adoption of the agenda as posted on Civic Clerk. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of our agenda as posted, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think that was an aye from Becca, and that's unanimous. Next we have public forum. I don't see anybody here in the room. I didn't know if anybody online would like to speak in public forum.
Point of order. It looks
Yes.
like we have the adoption of minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Before I go to public forum, second item on our agenda is adoption of our minutes from our February 19th meeting. Can I have a motion on that?
I'd move the adoption of the minutes as posted. It looks like staff has reviewed it some and made some edits. At least that's what AI says on it, whether that's true or not.
Staff, yeah, we have reviewed.
Excellent. And so yeah.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? No, all those in favor of adopting our minutes as posted?
I
Say
Aye.
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 And that is also unanimous. Now we'll move on to public forum. Again, there's no one in the room to speak to us tonight. Is there anybody online who'd like to speak at public forum? Indicate by using the raise hand function in Zoom. Going once, going twice. Seeing nobody. We will go ahead and close public forum. And move on to our deliberative agenda. And the first item on our deliberative agenda is titled GMT Visioning Budget and Service Update. And just as a sort of setup for this, I had reached out to Clayton Clark, the general manager of GMT, after we had had a couple sessions of public forum where we had people come and speak to us about difficulties getting to the hospital, and specifically getting out to Tilly Drive even. So I was wondering if we could have a conversation about that, but also usually this time of year, the legislature is working on GMT's funding for next year. So, and I know that GMT has been doing some planning as well. So we have Clayton back here tonight to speak to all of those things.
Thank you so much.
And Chris is here as well.
So, very happy that I have friends that I brought. So I'm Clayton Clark, General Manager for Green Mountain Transit. Hard questions will be delivered to Chris Damiani, our Director of Planning. And easy questions will be sent to Andrea Suazo, our Vice Chair, who is joining us virtually. And I'll take the middle questions. So I'm going to talk about our visioning efforts, the budget, and then try to leave most of the discussion for service and getting feedback from folks. I feel kind of like beginning of a Dickens novel. And in talking about the visioning, I'm going to be talking about sort of the best of times, and then when I transition to budget, we're going to talk about the worst of times. And then we're going to talk about service. So one of the things that GMT realized is that we've been a joint urban rural transit agencies for about 20 years now. And with the transfer of our rural service, of which half of which has already been transferred as of January 2nd. And the other half going to be transferred on July 1st. We realized that we needed to go through the exercise of thinking about our vision, mission, and values, thinking about it in an urban setting instead of more, broadly as a transit providers in both settings. And so we've our Board of Commissioners established an ad hoc committee that is going through this process. Susan Grasso, who is our commissioner from Shelburne, is the chair there and is doing an outstanding job of walking through this pretty aggressively. We're looking to do all of this in pretty much 4 to 6 months. The And really what it is done so far is that we've had focus groups with both our municipal partners, with some of our largest employers, some of our largest service providers, such as Howard Center and the hospital. And, really talking with them about, what success looks like to them, both in the short term and in the long term, and getting sort of their feedback on things that we may have done in the past that we want to make sure that we don't, particularly repeat any errors of the past. Talking about the different sort of transit trade-offs, whether, GMT is going to be a high frequency provider that only operates in the corridors that have, density, or are we going to be geographically spread and make sure that there's, transit everywhere, having these types of discussions. What I can say is going through the process just is that it's very refreshing that it's singularly focused in a geographic area. One of the things that I like is that we're already starting to think, beyond just fixed routes in our urban area. Where traditionally, we've been very sort of focused on fixed route and urban, and SSTA does all of the, sort of on-demand transit, and, never really thinking about what would be in between. And so I think that that's the type of thing that's going to be beneficial to our area here, because we're just going to have the capacity to think more deeply as an urban transit provider. One of the things that we're doing now, to give you an example, and I think that you've heard me talk about this in the past, is that we are studying like that combination of the ADA paratransit with some type of microtransit service. And I actually feel like, potentially we would have the capacity to do, such things, if there was a pathway forward, where in the past, I think that we would have really struggled. Gene, I thought of you often during the process because, one of the things that we've asked is, how people see GMT. And I've specifically said, because I've heard you say, is GMT a thought leader for all of public transit, that happens in the Chittenden County area? Or are we a provider, and, that thought leadership comes from elsewhere? One of the things that I've been surprised at is that we've gotten very different answers. Some people kind of want us to stay in the provider role and then have maybe, like Hatmore or somebody else be the, the thought leadership. Where other people want us to, to kind of step into that. Ultimately, the board is going to have to, lay out that vision for us, and then unfortunately, that vision is really going to have to keep in mind the constraints that we're going to be talking about when I get to the next section, and so, but before I dive into the dismal science of economics, I wanted to kind of hear thoughts from you all about the visioning. If there's any concern about what it is that you've heard so far, I've been really happy that Chapin has been able to be involved in the visioning process, and so I think is doing an outstanding job of representing Burlington in the process. But want to give you an opportunity to weigh in.
Okay.
So, tell me more about who is on what side of the thought leader question, and then where staff is at. If you had the power through the magic wand, what side of that would you be on?
Well, I can tell you that we are staffed to be a provider. And so if we were going to be the thought leader, I would be worried about having the capacity for it. Even with the rural transfer, I think it's going to be a stretch for us to think beyond our operational day.
Have you thought of more deeply than the gut on what it would take to be the thought leader?
Well, one of the things that we've actually started in that direction, and certainly with Chris's leadership here, is that we realized that our planning efforts were not adequate. And when I arrived, Chris was our only planner for 5 counties of service. And so that's an awful lot to expect of a person. And one of the things that Chris has done is worked with CCRPC with their UPWP, sorry to be throwing so many acronyms. And we've been able to augment so that we have 2 additional planners who will be joining us. So, and with 90% of those costs paid for by CCRPC. So that does mean that at least from a planning perspective, we are going to have the capacity to do planning in our urban area better than we've probably ever been able to have. And so I think that that will help lay the groundwork, at least for the non-political, the technical side of being a thought leader.
So before you answer the question of some people on one side, other people on the other side, you have not been staffed up, budgeted up for that. You're getting a little bit more now. Is there anybody in we'll call it the county, I'll limit it, but that it could include state, maybe it is the state, but acting here, that is in the position, in your opinion, to be doing that role right now, that are staffed up, that are interested in it, with all the components?
Yeah, I don't know of anybody that has the capacity.
And so we're basically in a situation of a quote unquote system where everybody is fundamentally in the same place as you are.
Yes.
Thank you. That sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Can I ask a question about because and I don't mean to
No, go ahead.
Just around this point, it's I think that GMT is doing this every day. So like it or not, you are a thought leader. You know how this enterprise works better than anybody else who might want to bring their ideas to bear on it.
Yeah.
What's lacking, what works, what the challenges are, even maybe governmentally and municipally and every other which way. So I think that GMT has to be a thought leader, but this is it sounds like, I agree with Gene. I think it's someone's got to be in charge of driving the bus, to extend the metaphor.
Yeah. And I think that metaphor is exactly why some folks are concerned about us doing that too much, because we right now especially, we have one service type. It's that whole, if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so I think that what you hear from some of the folks with concerns is that they're thinking much more intermodally with car share, with bike share, and that we are one, provider within that, realm. Sure, the provider that moves 2 million, provides 2 million rides here. But I think that they want to think of public transit as being, more than just, bus service. And that's probably one of the things that makes them want to think about that.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that I think in this climate right now, I think it's more than necessary for somebody needs to be a thought leader. Somebody needs to be in there saying that that public transportation, and specifically non-car public transit, I don't know if I would consider car sharing to be of that sort. It's I think what people are who are advocating for this strongly are looking for state run, state paid, regional run mass transit services that carry a lot of people to the most important places that they need to go. That's as close to their house as possible, to school, to work, we're gonna talk about to their medical appointments. And that there needs to be a provider for that. Preferably, there needs to be one provider for that, that is able to, operate it in as large of a scale as they can and support as many people as possible and be able to do that with equity. So I appreciate GMT for filling that role, and yeah, I'm interested to learn more about this visioning, but I think it is like, it does seem that you have to do both, and I wish it could be that you're the spend as much time as possible on providing the service, and that there were more groups that can do that advocacy. But you're clearly very, very good at the advocacy too. So,
and really, and not to, violate the Hatch Act. I just have to be careful because, what really is needed is there to be a political entity that is supporting public transit, where right now there's not. And as a municipality, we couldn't have a political action committee, or be affiliated with one. But what I can say is that when legislators this year introduced language that would create the ability for an option tax on gas and diesel to fund public transit, within days, a political action committee was sending legislators, that this will not be, tolerated, don't support it. Again, there's just not that corresponding, that balance.
Is our lobbyist, do we know if our lobbyist is?
Probably not, but I think that speaks to the coordination of the work and then the strategic thinking, the planning, so to speak. If you're going to engage in a battle, you should have figured out when the appropriate time to launch the first missiles and bombs, and make sure that then the strait is not done. Let me just so I'm just looking up in terms of visioning that, like the MTA. So, big city transit authorities, right, are multimodal. And so I think that part of visioning means being able to look into the future and see a different way than the way we have been doing something. So I'm interested in, when we get into the conversation about the state transit bill, their big bill, and what that does, and then maybe scheduling another follow-up meeting to help with the facilitating of a conversation that would bring other players together, maybe starting just in this committee, and then you could go to something like the CATMA conference, or even a different strategic because there are a lot of players, and it makes no sense to me that we would launch a war on public transit that we were not prepared to fight. And that the most important thing in that regard is to have gathered the forces together, so then you can figure out how we're going to do this, right? Because that's what it's going to take.
Absolutely.
Becca, go ahead.
Hi. Forgive my ignorance here, but it just seems kind of crazy to me that like nobody who's in charge of this stuff around here, like why is GMT left to be the visionary? Like what? So I guess I would love a little bit of help understanding, in lay terms, like where does the DOT, the Department of Transportation, and the governor's, responsibility to keep the state running and moving fit in here? Because that's, when I think about all of the players that I'm aware of in the state, it seems like that is a good place to start kind of set some policy and set some vision. So is that just not happening because of political preferences, or is it a a systemic sort of like is the governance and oversight system not set up right, so that this is just sort of a missing piece? Can you help me understand that a bit?
Sure. And so what I can say is that VTrans is a critical partner for us. Even in our urban side, they're more critical on the rural side because they just have additional responsibilities there. But even on our urban side, they make decisions about how to use federal funds that greatly aids GMT. One of the things that they've traditionally done is flexed between $4 and $5 million worth of highway funds that potentially would be going towards bridges and roads, that they flex to GMT, that they certainly don't have to, and we appreciate. And so when you look at our overall budget, about 2/3 of it comes from the federal government, but about half of that, those federal funds end up flowing from VTrans, and about half of them come in directly to us from the FTA. And so you definitely see VTrans involved. I'll say that VTrans very much takes its lead from who's in the governorship, and so I'm sure that folks can make their own informed decisions about Chittenden County's prioritization and the current governor. So I don't want to speculate too much on that. But I will say that there is a structural problem in how the legislature handles public transit, because public transit falls under the House and Senate Transportation Committees. These committees really are focused on roads, bridges, airports, railway, the full spectrum. But what they're really not too focused on, and I'm sure some of them would be offended to hear me say this, but they're really not focused on people. And so my perception is that when I talk to the transportation committees about the impact on riders, that it's a secondary to their concerns about making sure that they balance transportation both. And that when I talk to committees like healthcare, human services, economic development, housing, that those are the committees that are more passionate about public transit, because the outcome of public transit supports the things that they care about. And so if there was one sort of fundamental change that could be made at the legislature when it comes to public transit funding, is that I think that we need to figure out a way to have other committees weigh in, because I think that it will continue to be sort of left behind.
All right, thank you. That's really helpful for me to understand, because this is it makes sense why we are in this situation, because you don't, what I'm hearing is we don't have the internal advocate that we need to be really bringing this up as much as it needs to be. So thank you.
Well, and I think that where you see that long term is that we often mention that there's been about a dozen studies over the past 30 years about public transit financing that really hasn't been acted upon. And I think that the fact that the committee that would be acted upon it is the Transportation Committee, probably is one of the reasons why that's the case.
Is there more on this before you continue the next piece?
So let's talk about we had the best of times with how things are, and really, if it wasn't for the money, I would be very happy with how things were looking at GMT right now. I think that many organizational things are looking upwards. But then when we look at the finances, I'm going to start first with looking at local. And by local, I mean both, municipal and state. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the surface transportation bill, which is the federal funding source for our public transit. So the fiscal year 27 T-bill that the House Transportation Committee just put out. I do want to say that I didn't realize when I had sent the news update, I said, hey, the numbers must be coming later because there's no numbers in this. It's because the Transportation Committee pretty much adopted the governor's transportation budget without change. And so there was only a few numbers that they changed, and that's why there were numbers in it, which just shocked me that that committee pretty much accepted that budget as it was. And so that means that our fiscal year 27 budget, we're going to be about $500,000 in the red. We think that that could climb because our diesel contract expires in July, and I have a feeling we're going to be paying a lot more for diesel than we have in the past few years. So that could grow. But the reality is that fiscal year 27's budget challenges are not insignificant, but they're not, you know, we're probably going to be able to handle most of this without having to do too many additional service changes. The real challenge is going to be fiscal year 28. Federal carbon reduction funds are going to be expired by then. All of our past ARPA and COBRI relief funds will be expired by then. And we know that even if our federal funding doesn't change, we have about a $3 million in the red on a $20 million budget. So that's a significant amount. What scares me more than what is happening here locally is that the surface transportation bill is the multi-year bill that the federal government uses to fund public transit. I very much appreciate that they do these multi-year bills instead of having different funding levels every year that would make things even more difficult to plan. And the current 5-year agreement, which was created by the Biden administration, expires on September 30th. And so knowing that 66% of our funding comes from the federal government from that surface transportation bill in some way means that we are extremely vulnerable to changes. Last week, we were briefed by the New England Public Transit Association, which we're a member of. You know, part of their work is congressional monitoring. The surface transportation bill normally is well underway for markup at this point. They haven't started it yet. The administration has yet to provide specific guidance to start it, and unfortunately the FTA administrator resigned last month. I have spoken to that FTA administrator in the past, and I felt like he was an honest advocate for public transit. I don't know if his departure just before the administration starts putting out some of their surface transportation bill ideas is a coincidence, or but it doesn't seem like a good thing to be happening. And so the reality is that first off, I don't know if we're going to have a bill come October 1st. So I'm worried that there could potentially be a gap if there's not a continuing resolution. But probably more importantly, I'm worried about the things that could potentially come out of that, because there's some things that could really just cause GMT to have to do an overhaul of its service almost overnight. One of the things that I know is being looked at is the potential of prohibiting the flexing of highway dollars to public transit. There's some folks who feel that if FTA or Department of Transportation is providing dollars for bridges and roads, it should go for bridges and roads and not transit. That would be very problematic for us. Anecdotally, we just believe from what people have, and in conversations with congressional staff that probably we're looking at a 15 to 20% overall reduction in base level funding. And so, these things coupled together could mean that, GMT is looking at millions of lost federal revenue each year that we would have to make up. The thing that makes this, at least, this is good news, but it's almost infuriating that it's so unpredictable. There's also been some proposals that may actually help us. And so one of the things that some folks in Congress think that there should be a greater emphasis on competitive awards. And so we do very well with competitive awards. We've talked often about the fact that we have 4 of 6 stick factors. There's the potential that there would be an increase in the set aside for stick factors, so that instead of getting, say $550,000 for each stick factor, which is what we currently receive, so about 2.2 million in total, it could be closer to 800,000 or $1 million. And so if that came through, that would be very positive for us. Not to get too political, but there's also seems to be a desire to reallocate federal funding away from major metropolitan areas towards rural and small urban areas, which tend to be a bit more purple. And so if that changes, then potentially we could see an increase in our direct appropriation, not a decrease. So it really means that I really don't know how much money we're going to have that month from now, and the range is pretty darn wide, and that's really going to influence the service decisions that we're making. And when I move into talking about service, because for example, I know that restoring front door service to the hospital is going to cost about $110,000 a year. The reason why we made the change, and my recommendation to the board, and of course it's just going to be the recommendation and the board will decide, is that we probably shouldn't be adding any service right now, because I just think it's too risky in light of the potential funding challenges. That I would prefer that we wait until this fall, when we at least have an idea of what we'll be receiving. There is the possibility that there would be a continuing resolution that would go on for a year. But frankly, I just think that politically, I don't see that as being very attractive to the administration. I think that they're going to want to make sure that they do this bill before the election, because of potential changes in the makeup of the houses. So let's forget about that depressing stuff. Talk about the service. So I mentioned.
Do we want to pause for questions about budget on the service?
The only question I had is what role our congressional delegation plays, and whether they're whether they are a player in this or not.
Not really, because it's formula based. They have very limited ability to help us on an ongoing basis with our appropriations, and they're not really directly on the committees that would be most beneficial to us. I can tell you, when having talked with their staffs, that they're very supportive, and so I think that they're doing what they can, but they're not in a great spot for GMT. Great progress.
I had just a question about the FY27 budget.
Yeah.
Is the transportation bill and the legislature, Is it fully baked or is there room for advocacy to
So-
sort of add to that?
I think that there will be room. I can tell you that there's some legislators who are looking to schedule a joint hearing between the House and Senate Transportation Committees to take public feedback. I think that that will be important, and we will certainly be supporting of that, to include helping to get people to the State House so that they can tell their perspectives. The bill was released to in the House last week. It's gone to Ways and Means, and then it will make it through being voted out of the House in the coming weeks. And I would expect that, or actually I already know that the Senate is taking testimony on it. Anticipation of Michael Short.
So I guess that the follow-up to that is, what can we do to advocate for improvements and also to support the good things that you've got listed in your memo, so that they stay in or approved?
What I would recommend is that the 5 members of the Senate Transportation Committee do not have anyone from our urban membership. And so potentially reaching out to the President Pro Tem, would probably be the best way to convey a message of urgency.
And a simple message that would be helpful to GMT would be stated as what?
And so I wish that it was more elegant than just more money. I think that we could certainly argue that filling the $500,000 gap will just lessen the 28 gap, and so not, one-time money is part of the reason why we're in this situation, but if we can still continue it to keep hunting the reductions further away, that is probably better than reducing now. Although I will say, one of the things that's come out sort of strongly in the visioning focusing groups is people saying, you know what, you're constantly being in crisis is undermining your service, and just cut the service now and let people know what the new stable service is. I don't quite buy it, but I was surprised that people felt that that was a viable approach.
Mm-hmm. And there are things in it that would also change and improve the charter. And,
Yes.
And they would be areas that would in part also lead to potential increased revenues.
Absolutely, and so that I'm very happy that our request for the additional language in the charter was added as part of the T-bill. And one of the things that will do, and if I could just sort of walk through the hospital's request, because really it's that request and us looking at that made us request this legislative change. And so I mentioned earlier that the cost of restoring that service is $110,000. And so under our formula for assessment, if we were to say, hey, you know what, we want to restore that service, what we would then do is that we would then add those hours under Burlington, because it would be happening in Burlington. And the Burlington assessment would be changed to reflect approximately 20% of the cost of that service to be added to Burlington's assessment. The 80% would be unfunded. And so then that just contributes to our deficit. And so what we would be able to do is have the clarity that we would be able to go to the hospital or any other large employer that wants us to sort of deviate to their business and be like, well, you know that we think it's a great idea and it would cost $110,000, and if we can find a way to pay for it, either through you, through partially the city, maybe, then we can be held whole or will be whole and can make this change without then impacting the whole system. And so I think that I understand that in 1973, when the formula for assessment concept was created, that They really wanted to make sure that that there was equity and that you didn't just have like like a large employer or a large municipality be able to dictate all of the service. That's why a formula for assessment was developed. But I think that it has hamstrung us in our ability to have bilateral agreements.
I mean, if or then when it is appropriate, to move that support a note, letter, whatever communication to Senator Burris along the lines who would request that a combination, that our GMT delegate or whatever whatever they're called, board members plus GMT help us sort of craft that with regard to this, so that
Would you think that would be something that we would, for our next council meetings with the 14th?
Yeah, I was thinking that if the two were to send something off, that would not preclude the full council from doing it, but that he'd get it early. And I can't believe that can't be better than waiting.
And so is that a motion?
I would make that motion, and it's clear enough for
So there's a motion on the table. Becca, do you want to get in on this discussion? We're discussing sending a note that our GMT board members would help us craft from this committee to the Senator from Town, Bill Baroon, expressing that they make sure that we see if we can find a way to fill the $500,000 shortfall that's currently anticipated in the.
Yep. Yeah, I support that. I might add, as well as the members of the Senate Transportation Committee.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'll second the motion.
and that is a fine addition.
Thank you. Friendly.
It is friendly.
And Eric's seconded. Is there any other discussion on this? And I guess we'll have to take this off. I guess the actual crafting. How will we process that as a committee? I mean, do we need to?
If we could get a draft that's in line with this, then I think that
That would be. That would.
perhaps,
In order.
yeah, something like that, that would,
Okay. Then I will work. Should I work or do you
I
want
would
to?
love for you to work with it, but
I'll work with,
great idea, but
with Clayton on this and we'll figure it out. And I'll make sure that we craft a note that's largely in line with what we talked about
Yeah.
here. And I will circulate it to the committee so that if there is any feedback, we can do that one other way.
Councilor Bergman, I'm impressed with your use of delegation.
Well,
Inspiration.
like if somebody is gonna step up, I should be helping to facilitate.
Mark, point of order.
Yes.
We need a vote.
yeah, we have to vote. We haven't done that yet.
Okay, just checking.
Thank you. So, if that is all well understood and the discussion on this is done, we can go ahead and vote on it. All in favor of the motion as presented and crafted here. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I think so. So that's unanimous. We'll work on that. But so we still need to talk about service. I'm gonna do mine full time. We're at 6:15. We've been going about 45 minutes. And I know there's a couple other items, but I think we can go probably still another 15 or so and then we'll wrap.
And so, getting back to the number 11, I do want to let you know that last week, the GMT board did approve us going out to public input, which will probably happen late spring or summer to get public input on whether that change should happen. we certainly have received more feedback asking for it to return. But there has been feedback that they actually like the bypassing of the hospital because it does make it much faster for those folks who aren't going to the hospital. And so so I'll be interested to see how the public discussion there goes. And so my hope being that, you know, if everything turns out rosy, both with the legislature here and with Congress, and you know, we'll then be able to act on the fall because we've already had that public meeting done. We are also going to be doing service changes to the link based on the scheduling. And so right now, the Montpelier link is operated both by GMT Urban and GMT Rural. It's a split. After the transfer, it will be operated solely by GMT Urban, which means all of the routes will be coming from here, which means that we're going to have to adjust the route times. And so we'll be taking feedback on that. And then we're also going to be looking at routing of the number 5, which would be right out here. And one of the things that we are looking to do is to have the route change based on the Social Security Administration office and Human Services offices moving on the lakeside, and this would improve access there. And so what that means is that the number 5 route would go down a home, and then just on the way back into town would be on Champlain Parkway longer and come out here. So those are the I think that the changes that are going to be mostly impacting you all. Could they have the Franklin commuter, we're also looking at some route improvements from that. That's what goes from St. Albans to Milton. That is a combined route that we find the St. Albans link and the Milton commuter last year, and we're just still tweaking the routes there. And I know.
And the last one is the number 4, which is the Essex Center.
Oh, yes.
So that operates between Essex Junction and Essex Town.
Yes.
That has been a long-standing route that's been considered underperforming by V-Trans via their performance report. We've made many iterations over the past 6 to 10 years on that route. So that's another piece that will be going out to public comment on.
I can't believe that the one that I forgot is the one that's the actual elimination. And so the town of Essex and that's pretty much their only service right now. And it's been 10 years that it's been economically underperforming. Right now, the cost per ride is in the high 20s, which is about 4 times the rate for our in-town rides. And so it's become clear that from the state's perspective, that if we were to continue with this service, it would interfere with their ability of giving us more funds. So they're kind of like, you still have this non-performing route, you got to get rid of it. I will also say that getting back to the budget, something that I had forgotten to mention is that we have some verbal commitments from V-Trans that they want to make sure that we maintain our stick factors. And so when it comes to the fiscal year 28 budget, that they will want to provide us enough funding so that we don't lose competitive awards. I really appreciate them saying that. I also look at their funding situation, and I'm not sure that they're going to be in a position to be able to deliver on that. So I'm sorry that I just remembered that when we're talking about. And so those would be the only service changes that we're looking at and gathering public feedback on for the time being. And then really this fall will be when we start ramping up, potentially to fill that $3 million gap or to fill a bigger one depending on the surface transportation bill. So I expect that this will be a fall that's going to be filled with public meetings that are gonna be, hearing from folks who are gonna be very distraught.
Committee?
Yeah, thank you for all this. I'll be interested to see what happens with the vote on rerouting the 11 to the hospital, but I'd be remiss to not mention, I think one of the reasons that we wanted to bring you in was to talk about a lot of what we've been hearing from the public, and don't mean to speak for the committee, but I've talked to Gene, I've talked to Mark about this. We've heard some feedback from folks about rerouting the 11 to the hospital. But we've something new that we've been hearing is about how UBMMC is moving a lot of their specialist services to Tilly Drive in South Burlington.
Yes.
And that there is currently no shuttle operation by the hospital. I don't believe that for patients to get from the main campus to Tilly Drive and then or otherwise. And one of those services, there's an example, is orthopedics. The 11, I think, is the closest one that gets you there. Their last stop at Timber Lane. That's like a 20-minute walk.
Yeah.
And if you're going for your orthopedics appointment, that's not great.
It's more than 20 minutes.
And so I GMT does not operate a shuttle, but SSTA does. But one of the things that I recognize is that, in the past, we made the determination that there wasn't enough sort of patient demand going out to Tilly Drive to warrant a route. But as more and more keeps getting added to Tilly Drive, I recognize that's something that's going to be changing. We've received pretty consistent feedback that the shuttle that SSTA is providing, through no fault to SSTA, but it's not frequent enough. It makes for a very tough day because sometimes people will have to wait out until they drive, for 3 or 4 hours. And so I definitely see that as a gap. And I can tell you that if I wasn't in the financial position I was, that would certainly be in my top list of things that we need to address for just the reasons stated. But I do, and Chris, do you remember off the top of your head about the Tilly?
It runs 4 times a day, and it's about 2.5 hours between each of the runs. So it starts at 7:30 and then 9:30 or 10 and then 12:30 and then 2 and 4.
Yeah. And so especially like if you have an appointment that's right at like that midpoint between the 2 runs, you're going to be there, most of the day.
The other thing about appointments at Tilly is they don't necessarily run
On time.
on schedule either, so.
I guess I just, it allowed I'd be remiss that sort of the connection in all the examples that we pointed out, the sort of connection between land use decisions and sort of what transit is asked to do. So I think I would just keep that in mind about all that.
I think I like the gondola idea from the hospital to Tilly. I think it would be nice and scenic.
Beta. Sure. So in all of this, and it's consistent with hopefully the new authority that you would get from the state bill, is the opportunity / necessity of engaging in TDM agreements with employers and residents and even retail destinations. And that is, and so when I think about you getting 2 new planners, right? I mean, really looking innovatively. So I hate to say that, that you should be the thought leader, but I don't really think there's anybody else out there who has the motivation to do that. Maybe it would be the regional planning, but they're engaged in everything. So and they are service, and so. Yeah, the hospital may be the first place. I think that, Chris, your comment about land use is something that we can weigh in on in any sort of relationship that would include the Green Mountain Care Board, right? Because they're the regulator. If you're gonna squeeze money out of the hospital, they've got to approve it. And so it's important that we lay that stuff out. Maybe there is an alliance that we can make with South Burlington. It's in South Burlington, right? So I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to be really innovative, and I think that the further out you go, the more microtransit becomes more necessary, just because people are spread and the sort of on demand. And I think when I was looking at my Metropolitan Transit Authority, just to be able to get a sense of what a different system would be, I reminded that you got folks who live in the outskirts of the big cities, and they drive to a central location, and then they get on mass transit, they get on the train, they get on the MTA. There are buses, and so there are subways, and so they're all feeders. So, and getting people to there. So, we should stop masquerading as the cosmopolitan area and get with the program.
I had a question about the SSTA service to Tilly. Like, what's it mean to add an extra run? What is the cost associated with that?
I believe the hospital pays them directly.
Yes, that's a direct relationship between SSTA and the hospital. I believe that's part of their permitting for having buildings out there.
Okay. So it would be up to the hospital to add that convenience and extra, increase that basically.
Their relationship, SSTA's relationship with you all, because we're not constrained by that. We can say, we want that to happen, and we can be pushing for that, but so who brings that into us? How do we get that to happen?
Well, I mean, us knowing this also gives me a negotiation point for in the future when we're talking about the hospital, so that, all right, well, you would like us to return to work, we would like some money. Maybe you pay for more trips to Tilly. I mean, so that.
Please.
Yeah.
And one other policy piece I guess I would mention is for here in Burlington, you all at some point will be reviewing the Joint Institute Pension Plan, which oversees the large institutions. So that really is the city council's opportunity to play with those policy holders that transit.
And there's some work that's happening now, isn't there?
Yes, I don't know when that's coming to city council, but
these are probably can get.
It's also
at some point that would come to this committee and then eventually to the council.
we could work with South Burlington too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they're and if we understand sort of what the field of play is, then we can assemble the team to play on that field. That's what we need to do. So, and that sounds like that joint institutions plan. I mean, that's coming out of the planning office.
I'll get an update
Number.
Charles.
Becca, do you have any additional thoughts on any of this?
No, I think this is a great discussion though. Thank you.
Okay, is there more to talk about? Do you have more to offer us, Chris, or? And Merrick's not here.
I mean, the only thing is it would be helpful, we've had this discussion, we had one point of additional work. Like everybody else, we can then lose track of what we decided, what we thought of, what we should be doing. And so I would ask, speaking of being able to delegate, right, you all help us know what we can do to act. I mean, I think that what you have is a willing actor in this committee. And we need help being used, right? So that would be, you know, so even if it's on, you know, the joint transportation plan, work with South Burlington, anything with the hospital, all that stuff, that's where, you know, because you guys are like working through that to say, oh, I got a friend. I can access that friend.
I appreciate that very much.
So you'll lean on us.
I will try to do better at leaning on.
Good.
Very good.
I'm a people pleaser though, so I haven't asked for
Right.
so much from you all.
Well, you
I'm
can,
afraid of-
it's in our interest, our selfish interest, for you to lean on us.
You don't ask for a very much.
Okay,
Well, because I'm always asking for more money in the assessments that which I appreciate.
well, we appreciate you coming in again. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
For coming.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and close this item and move us on to our next item, which is industrial pre-treatment briefing and next steps. Yes, that was talk about same topic.
Yes, you don't have to take the full time, you might need to catch up. But thank you for the opportunity. This is, there's no formal action. I just want to have a conversation. I want to see if you guys, if you all think that the two may be the appropriate committee to take up the ordinance changes that we hope to advance later in April. Or the state ordinance, that's one of my questions out there, but mostly it's just information. It's, you know, a lot of work that's been happening, some very slow simmer in the background as we deal with all of the other elements of our infrastructure and wastewater treatment plants. But it is kind of coming to the front of the stove, in part driven by a grant requirement that we need to close out because there's funding that we received from the state ARPA funding, not municipal ARPA funding, to do some of this work and to look at the feasibility of creating a local program. And we need to make sure that we satisfy those requirements. But taking a couple steps back, I don't know how much people remember about industrial pollution prevention and why it exists. Wastewater treatment, we most often talk about the hydraulic side, the amount of water that our wastewater treatment plant can treat. And while that is very important, the other side is the sort of concentration or the volume of pollutants that we can treat. And there have been times due to existing industries, largely the breweries, so anything that produces or deals with a food product is going to potentially have a higher concentration of that food product or the organics go down the drain than your typical residential or even a lot of your commercial facilities. And so there's actually federal regulations that exist regarding these types of industries. It also includes other specific industries like metal finishing. So there are some permitted entities already like Edlands because of the types of things that potentially can leave their site. If we look back, I think largely the reason why a lot of these existing industries exist and weren't permitted was because they didn't pass or they didn't trigger the bright line part of the Code of Federal Regulations, which relates to how much their discharge is as a proportion of the total wastewater, as well as how much of their load is as part of the total. So individually, they don't trigger, but collectively, and when you look at what's on site, the large tanks that are held full of things like beer or cider, they do still have to be looked at because of their potential to cause harm to our wastewater treatment plant. Additionally, right now, we are often running at or near what is our engineered capacity to treat these organics. We have not had any permit issues, and that is largely the test of whether or not you're okay. But we know both that in the coming years before we're able to get our new plant online, and then even once the new plant is built, we want to make sure a couple things that we are reserving. We're not using up more of this organic capacity and the capacity of our plant than we need to be, and also out of fairness to our residential users, right? Right now, these folks, they do pay a surcharge, but they're largely paying the same wastewater fee that the residential user is paying, even though their stuff is much stronger. And so by bringing them into pollution prevention programs where they're still gonna be discharging more than the average bear, but we're gonna get them to a place that we think is reasonable. Not necessarily putting in pretreatment systems. So some breweries, Stowe, I think the Mad River Valley, they have breweries and they have their own little mini wastewater treatment plants to bring them into compliance. That's not what we're looking for with our existing folks. We have a plant, we're gonna be building extra capacity. It makes more sense to have us do it than to have all these little individual systems. But there's a lot of practices that they could put in place that's going to overall improve what they can do. So there's a lot of work in the background to calculate and figure out what is the maximum amount right now that we could accept from industries, and then figure out what allocations we're gonna give to this business versus this business versus this business. That has to happen whether the state ends up permitting them or whether we end up permitting them. And one of the things and one of the reasons why this is kind of coming back up in addition to the grant requirement is the state has made it clear, they've sort of caught up with the rest of the Vermont and are now honing in on the fact that we need to somehow, some way get these facilities permitted. A long time ago, we had decided, and we're still on this path, we believe that it is in the cities, the industries, and the lakes in our system's best interest that we do a local program and not necessarily have the state, who, yes, they can administer regulations, but they're not the ones operating the plant. They're not the wastewater operators who are smelling when the primaries smell like beer, and then being able to go out into the system and figure out if somebody stepped over the line regarding maybe discharging a large slug of material. So one of the things that has to happen for us to have a local program, and I mentioned it in the memo, and we are working with our lobbyist, is to do an update or a change to 10 VSA 1263, which covers these types of discharges. Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation is supportive of this, but can't actually delegate the authority to us without this change. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern, waiting for that to take place. Another thing that I mentioned that I think is relevant, I think will be of interest to the council and the committee, is there is another bill, S212, which is looking at sort of partial delegation or a different twist on delegation of state water and wastewater permitting. As you all may or may not know, every single project that changes its flow in Burlington right now, because we have a rigorous technical review process and a great engineering team, goes through our review, gets a letter from us, and then separately then has to go to the state and apply for the official piece of paper. We don't charge fees currently for our technical review, but the state charges fees for this review. And part of what S12 would allow for is for the state to delegate technical review to municipalities that have capacity such as ours. And then we would do the entire review, but then be able to leverage the state database, which has been one of the kickers for communities not really being able to do delegation well, is making sure that we're keeping track in a systematic way of how we're issuing these permits. So essentially, we would qualify for a general permit. We would pay, I think it's $100 is what's currently in S212, and then the project would still get a state water wastewater permit, even though we provided the review. So those two things are kind of happening in the legislature and are enough related that we think there's a good chance that our proposed language may get stuck into a draft of 212 over on the House side. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to up to speed on.
What was the other piece of the first piece of legislation you mentioned?
Doesn't have a bill number, it's just a proposal, and I can send you that. It's to add language to 1263 that would allow for the delegation of this specific part of discharge authority to a municipality voluntarily.
It's on page 2 of the memo.
Okay, I was looking at
This is
that.
stop.
Thank you.
So let's see. So we,
Got it.
so, and I attached the draft ordinance update to the memo packet. It's possible there could be some minor changes. We just got comments back from Vermont DEC. But what that is doing is making it, well, increasing the clarity. We already believe we have the ability to charge a surcharge. We have charged a surcharge, and that basically there's a certain limit in the ordinance of how much biological oxygen demand can be discharged to us, and if you were above that, right now there's no prohibition there. Well, it prohibits you from doing that unless you have an agreement with us, and right now the way we deal with it is, okay, you can discharge more, but we're going to charge you extra for that to kind of equalize the playing field. So we've clarified that ability, and then we also the way we've structured it is also have put in a section that should enable us to come back to the council to adopt a separate body of regulations, both for the administration of a local water wastewater permit as well as industrial permitting. So it puts language in there. We're not adopting them right now, but it sets up the playing field for us to be able to do that without having to continue cracking open the ordinance. And then it also establishes a new division. And you have the original, most recent drafter of chapter 26 here, but it puts a new division in there that essentially becomes effective once the state statute is changed and we notify the public that that statute has changed and that we are now going this direction. So because of the technical elements of the ordinance change and, you know, our great collaboration with you, we're wondering or thinking that when we go to the council to request this ordinance to be reviewed, that perhaps it would come to you all and not the ordinance committee. But I know that's worked well for us in the past and leveraged your talents. But I would like you to, you don't have to answer now, but if you can.
I'm willing to answer now.
Okay. Yeah. Couple of other things. We're about to circle back out to the industries to remind them. We've talked with them about this before. I don't think there was the perhaps as in your face part of the state being like, you're gonna get permitted, whether it's with us or with Burlington. So we need to communicate that to them. And we also want to let them know that we are planning on doing an additional round of sampling to kind of freshen up the data and make sure that whether it's the state that comes to Burlington and says, okay, how much do you want to allocate to this user, etc., or we're doing that allocation, that we have the best data. We don't want to put somebody in a situation of an unreasonable permit limit. Again, we're not looking for people to have to put in their own systems. We recognize that this is going to require some investment from these parties, and you know, we're just looking forward towards moving them towards long-term compliance. And then I think, you know, if there is a green light from the state about being able to create a local program, there are a number of additional steps we need to do, such as finalizing the regulations. Those have been drafted, but we're sort of have them on the back burner right now. We've done some looking at how we would locally resource this effort, since it would be taking on another thing without overall increasing our FTEs and water resources, because you know that is something everybody's keeping an eye on, and we have some ideas for that. We do think in the early years we will need some outside technical expertise, because it's some pretty complicated technical and regulatory stuff, but would be hoping to build a program, so that's not something that's needed over the long term. And with that, I think maybe just some dialogue would be the most helpful for me.
Okay.
Anything else?
Are you ready?
Sure. I am not in favor of the ordinance committee not doing this.
So
Okay.
not the ordinance committee, not doing it?
No, I am not. That's a double negative.
You want the
I want the ordinance
Okay.
committee to do this. This is actually not really technical stuff.
Okay.
For me, this is about, and reading through this all, this is about the process for creating regulations And so
That's fair.
all of that is in that, and I got, like, who drafted it, by the way?
The city attorney's office.
So Eric?
Yep.
Yeah, no, yes, I got issues with it, but that's not,
Okay,
that is consistent with other things that I've had to deal with these drafted, which is fine. It is, you know, lawyers are not,
they're not a monolith.
we work differently, so this is okay. So there is that, and I think that it actually is not really gonna make a huge functional difference in that I'm believing that Mark and I will be on the ordinance committee as well as this committee.
Okay,
And
I think it was more the amount of context to provide. I totally get what you're saying, and I agree. I agree that it is the way the ordinance that we're putting in right now, or the changes as at least drafted, are more process oriented.
yes, once you get into regulations where
Yep.
you're dealing with the
Okay.
details, that becomes a different thing. So just to give some guidance is my thinking. I know so the thought of it coming to the council on the 27th of April and getting referred to a committee, which I would hope would be the ordinance committee, I think that is fine.
Okay.
You know, as a thing, and it would be helpful knowing the amount of work that both the ordinance committee, this committee, the city council has got. You've got a range for adoption, right? You've got a target of June 30th.
Mhm.
And what I would ask you to do, and it really doesn't matter where it goes and how it comes back, is a range.
Okay.
You know, in the ideal, this is the last drop dead date, you know, you can get it in for us to not get screwed.
Right.
So that would be
For our
very,
grant, yes.
yes,
that
that
makes
would be
sense.
very helpful. The other
Okay.
thing that I'd ask you to be looking at is that there may be, and I can't remember what my note is referring to, but a decoupling of the regulation piece from other things that are necessary. I think I was reading in the memo that the ability to write regulations is not necessarily needed right now. I'm not sure if there is in other words, do you need changes? Can you decouple certain things here so that we can get done the thing that you need to be done by the deadline to be able to meet your deadline?
I understand.
So
Yeah, I think we were trying to be efficient with your time, that if you're going to look at anything, then you just eat the whole salami, and then we don't have to like go back to the ordinance. But I also.
I think that, although I appreciate that greatly, it may be that will delay your ability to get what you need done, and there is not a harm in us being able to get something done and out that you need to, and keeping jurisdiction over it and then coming back. We are starting to have to do that with other things because it's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
So I'd ask you to look at that so you can get what you need and not feel like we've got to eat the whole thing because you know you're dealing, regardless of which body you're in, you're dealing with a legal nitpicker. That's me.
What?
And
I know.
that is
It's
definitely not.
Can I ask, I guess one question,
It's essential.
is some of that dependent on that range that I give you, and could there be two versions where, and I don't even know if that's possible, where you examine whether or not you want to take up the whole thing, and then if not, I can give you the not whole thing.
I mean, I think we would jump into it and see how we go, but know that if you need to
Yep.
like jettison, think of the enterprise, and you have to eliminate whatever the thing is, and then because this is.
Okay, I like that approach, where we look and see if we can do it, but if we
Yeah.
can't, then there's certain sections and I can highlight those.
Absolutely, just to make it just to make it easier or something, and maybe it isn't going to be a problem.
Yeah, because we have to have things adopted by thumb drop dead date.
That's right, so we should just make sure
Okay.
that. And the other thing that I would I raised this last one, because it wasn't clear that it was consistent. I just want to make sure that what I see in here is consistent with the ordinance, the entire ordinance, including Article 1 of Chapter 26, and not just this division, but the prior ones. I think that, for example, in this, wherever you've got, like, you need to be citing authority, right? That you should actually like state the authority. So there's going to be some things that will I think will fix to make.
You might tweak elsewhere.
Yeah,
Yes.
that will fix there, but it's just a question of consistency, and because there seem to be maybe some inconsistencies here, but I without having, really done more than, just like an hour this afternoon, reading through it and then going back to the rest of the ordinance and looking at the charter and sections in the charter and how that all works.
Can I ask, is that some sort of pre-work that you would want to engage in before?
If Eric can look at that just to make sure, and you can look at it just to make sure that we're there and can articulate how it is.
Or you can say that, yes, I look at that.
And this is where it is, this is why it's consistent with that stuff. That would be really helpful. And if you want to tell them that I really think that the violation section needs work, that would be really I think it's not good, but I might be wrong. Okay, so
Being that it doesn't accomplish, or
do
do you want to send me more specific comments?
I know we can do that.
Okay,
I'm done.
do others want to weigh in on this? Becca, do you want to weigh in on this?
Thanks for checking on me, Mark. No, I don't have much to add. I think Jean's comments on sending it to ordinances are reasonable, and to Director Moore, we're happy to help get this done for you. So
I had a question about whether or not this is predicated on S212 or the changes to 10, 12, 16. Can we do it assuming that'll happen, or do we need to make sure that happens?
It doesn't have to happen, but we have to adopt something. For grant purposes, we have to make some changes.
Okay.
Yes. But we were trying to sort of set ourselves up that if we adopted this, 1263 happens. It's likely we may know more in the next month.
And
we don't have that much time left.
And there's nothing controversial about these changes. These things are not going to meet resistance from some constituencies.
I think that the stakeholders they have expressed hesitancy or resistance to just the concept of being regulated in the past. The challenge is that it's the code of federal regulations. We don't have discretion. The state does not have discretion with these particular types of users because of their size and their potential. So, for a long time, I think the state didn't have a very well developed program, wasn't focusing on this. They actually got whacked by the EPA a number of years ago and have been slowly addressing it, and were aware that we were working on it. We think it's important for a multitude of reasons, but then additionally, even if we decided we didn't agree with our own reasons, they still have to be permitted. And so our only decision in this would be hands off, go ahead, state, do what you need to do, check in with us about our facility and what pounds we want to allocate, or we can be more fully engaged in the process, which we think, while it's a little bit more burden on us and may cost the ratepayers a little bit, we think the benefit in the end is going to be better. We'll be able to, not double charge. If we want to charge fees, then we're not doubly charging these folks. We would be able to have those fees stay here in Burlington so that we can support resources and do compliance and all of that. So we just very similar to us doing the state and water wastewater review. We just think it makes sense in this day and age of modern staffing and modern focus, and you know, we've got people who can look at all of the things far better than one person at the state who's trying to cover the entire state.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, do you have anything on this? And so we would look for this not to come back to two, but to come to ordinances.
Yeah, but then if I'll become bring in the regulations, which are far more juicy to you, I'm assuming that's kind of what you were thinking, that regulations that would probably come. Once we get to that stage of looking at regulations which are highly technical, then it would be appropriate to have this body.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you have the regulatory framework for adopting regulations, then depending on how that is, I mean, you right now have this drafted so that it's the commission that is adopting regulations.
Yes.
So I'm not really a fan of that, but that's in an ordinance structure.
Sure.
Yes.
So,
Well, let's see what comes out, we'll come to ordinance and see where it gets to and go that way.
We're always trying to balance, we know you have heavy workloads, and so
In both committees.
yeah.
both committees, and then, trying to balance are there steps for others who then can recommend to you, but totally open to that
I
conversation.
think the advantage of ordinance is that we have a staff lawyer.
Mm.
And if we do it right next to the attorney's office, and this is lawyer heavy stuff.
Okay.
Is that?
That's Kim.
It is kept, but
Okay.
Eric has come.
It's,
Is that all you need from us?
it was just like didn't wanna be a giant
A preview.
review. It's the first pilot of the show that.
And we will be working with stakeholders who may have
Yes.
feedback here, and you all being able to give context to the counselors when this fully comes to council will be very helpful, so thanks for taking the time.
Excellent. Okay, if there's nothing more on this item, I'm gonna take us to our next
Thank you.
deliberative item. Thank you, Nick. Which is.
You'll send me any additional comments, Gene,
Sure,
if you have.
Winooski Bridge,
it's more like the.
is it COBRI, is that, or do you say?
COBRI.
COBRI,
Yeah,
COBRI intersection condemnation process.
so thank you for your support last night. We approved, or you all approved our ability to sign our easements for the two parcels that the city owns. The memo was very heavy, so very similar to the memo we brought back to the chief this last month. We asked for the item tonight in the event that it did go on consent last night, so that we would have the opportunity to talk to counselors. As we look forward to moving this process through the city council in April, May, and June. So really, the item here tonight is to ensure that you can give us any feedback on the process. We are hoping to go to the April 13th regular city council meeting in consultation with the Office of City Attorney and the outside counsel that we have hired to support us in this. The April 13th meeting will be used to describe and to request that through the city council mayor presiding, that the body designate a hearing date for this project. It will be designating the date for which the necessity hearing and the compensation hearing will occur. Per your suggestion, we are asking the administration for that to be a special meeting, tentatively targeting May 21st or 28th as our first kind of loose target dates. It has to be a minimum of 30 days after the city council meeting, and we're looking for a few days of buffer in there just to ensure that mail is delivered and received properly, that people do receive a true 30 days from on the receipt of their mail of the date that the hearing is set for. It could occur potentially a little bit later. We understand that this is a very challenging time, city council schedule, budget process, and the fiscal year. But that is our tentative target dates that tend to not conflict as terribly with other ongoing business. That meeting, the special meeting, will include a mandatory site visit. It will include presentation from the project staff. It will have time for counselor questions at the end of the technically 4 hearings that are going to occur that night, and then a testimony by property owners.
Big deal.
It's a big item.
And you're saying that would those site visits would happen on the 21st or 28th
Correct.
of May.
And then what would occur is the necessity hearing happens, the testimony and the 4 processes are ongoing. The hearing can either be continued to another date warned hearing date, or it can be closed and the findings can occur either at that meeting or at a later point in time. This is something very similar to how the DRB actually acts. They can either act that night, they can act later on. Or you can continue it to a regular city council meeting, which would be my recommendation, and just act on it there. So that it is still within a public body in a public setting. It's a relatively large project. The necessity that we're requesting specifically for the Chase Mill is a pretty notable parcel in our community's fabric. And the request is larger there. The requests for the properties in and around the intersection at this point in time are mostly temporary construction easements or utility easements. All of the real significant requests have actually closed. So with that, I ask what information you are seeking for us to bring to the April 13th meeting. Again, we will give a project update. We will give a little bit about this process. But we are preparing for that now.
Committee?
I think you have to believe that everybody there doesn't know anything about anything. And therefore, you have to walk us through sort of everything and then have pictures that say, this is what we're talking about. These are the plays that.
So we've done that kind of similar to your February meeting. Did that level of detail feel appropriate? You're probably the most familiar individual.
When you say that our February.
The Tukes
The
February.
Tukes here, okay, not the city councils, I thought I missed.
No.
Do you anticipate this is controversial at all? Do you anticipate this being controversial?
I don't think that it will be hard to find necessity for what we are requesting. I think that will be easy for the councilors to find that what we're asking for is kind of the bare minimum to be able to replace what we need replaced or change the intersections. The compensation is a little bit harder. It is a separate hearing. And it is where we will share with the council what we have offered the property owners as a formal offer. I do believe that we are being very fair with our property owners, especially if they were all given initial offers. Most of them have chosen to renegotiate. And I do believe that this has been a very fair process for what we are asking of them. It doesn't mean that these are not business owners that are interested in asking for.
Yeah, I'm not asking it that we get into
Yeah.
it, just to set the table for the council, just to sort of build on what Jean was saying, we need to sort of make the case as, assume nobody knows anything.
Yep, no, all of that will be presented. We heard your request the last time. We will ensure that the Office of City Attorney kind of outline how this quasi judicial board is meant to act, what the protocols are. That'll probably be an attachment to the documentation so that, you know, while we can outline kind of the highlights of what we're going to go through, you can have kind of a cheat sheet, you know. We'll give you the Cliffs Notes version, but you can have the cheat sheet of the substance included with it.
Is any of this executive session worthy or not? Because it's a real estate transaction, but
Yep.
it's a different kind of real estate transaction.
The executive session would occur after we open compensation, after we have initial presentations, testimony from property owners. If the city council with the mayor presiding feel that the offers that we've given and have been publicly presented to the property owners we would like to offer them something different. That is where we would do the next continuation or an executive session, because that's where we would discuss our negotiation tactics, which are meant to be private until presented.
So the quasi judicial aspect of the compensation hearings. Gonna be, I think, important to be really clear, everybody be really clear, because you're negotiating with property owners. And then we need to rely on somebody, right? And so in those settings, often it's like the city is a separate party, and then you've got the judge making the decision in terms of, is this fair or not? And so being really clear, actually, not only about our role and what we're looking at, and how we're getting the information to look at it. Also, your role, staff's role, and the interactions that we have with you at sort of all the levels and all the stages of the process. That becomes really important, so that we maintain the integrity right out in the front. And then
So an explanation of the role of council.
yeah,
As
like there
this
may be
was,
there may be legal to counsel.
Yeah.
To counsel. You know, if Laura is negotiating with property owners right now, then who do we have that has not been engaged in that, who, you know, is seen as more neutral, if that's necessary, to be advising us in there, so that there is not this, you know, undue prejudice that we have with that. And, you know, I mean, unfortunately, I dealt with that in the context of abatement hearings,
Yeah.
which led me to the Vermont Supreme Court. Right.
Well,
so I don't want that, you know.
Fortunately, Maddie and I are fairly well removed. While we are connected to the process as it relates to being able to bring the condemnation process through our city council body, we are not the negotiators in this project.
So, yeah, so
V-Trans is acting as the right-of-way negotiators themselves.
excellent. So
Yeah.
laying all that out and making it clear sort of what the arm's length relationships that we should have.
Yeah.
Would be really important.
So I do believe, you know, I know that this is a really tough time of the year for this to go through. We outlined the last time that we were here how important it is to start it through this process and really work towards a conclusion at the end of June. I do think that is a feasible path, and we have had some substantial conversations. And it is unfortunately necessary as it relates to our federal funding that we have for the bridge and the intersection. And it would be really hard in these times to lose those opportunities, because then that cost comes back to both cities of Burlington and Winooski directly for what V-Trans can't fund.
Becca, do you want to get in on this topic?
Yes, thank you. I agree with a lot of what Jean is saying. I think what we want to avoid here is showing up and having a fight, right? Like, you know, the people, this is property rights and all of that. I think can be a tough subject, even when it's handled really well. So I agree with just laying out, you know, who's in charge of what, and why. And then also, I guess I was just wondering, you know, in terms of who I'm sure there's some privacy stuff, which is as it should be, but, you know, are we talking about commercial property owners, residential, like who is impacted by this? And then I'm also wondering, you know, if this were in Ward 6, I might want to serve a role in facilitating conversations, or, you know, I guess I'm curious to hear more about like just the dialogue process and the temperature overall.
So overall negotiations have been going really, really well, given what we've been requesting. It is a mix of residential and commercial properties. The commercial properties are within the Chase Mill, as well as some of the restaurant and so you call it restaurant between Mill Street and Barry Street.
Yep.
And some of these are rental properties included in this multi-unit, quite the mix of various different properties. And again, the requests are very rational, reasonable. Property owners, several of them have already signed and completed their paperwork and are, even since we were here at the Tuke in February, there are more that we do expect to conclude, even though they may open themselves during the necessity and compensation hearing. We expect that they will probably close before a decision is requested of the city council, and then therefore they have your decision list. I don't know.
Sorry, could you, right now, I'm just looking at the list and it sounds like there are 20, there are, is it 21 total property owners?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Without having added them up specifically.
14 for the intersection and 7 for the bridge.
Yes.
And then and then some have signed. So we're looking to be doing the ones that have not signed.
Correct.
Correct.
Yep. And the list that was shared with
There are 10.
Go ahead, Maddie.
I can give a quick update. There are 10 properties that haven't signed yet. 2 of those are ours, and 2 of them are the city of Winooski. So it's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, that might not have worked out the math, but there's 7 properties that are still need to be signed that aren't municipal parcels. So, and with the city passing last night, that takes ours out of the equation, and Winooski is underway with their parcels. So that's the latest.
One person has 2 parcels for the bridge, which is probably throwing off her math. One's part of the building and one's part of the parking lot. And again, these have been going really, really well. The property owners that Maddie and I have been with them during their negotiation seem to have a really good handle on this. They haven't, to Becca's point, they haven't been like, who's here to help me with this yet? And through this process. And because you are going to be asked to be on the judicial deciding board, it's actually important that you don't stand there with your residents. You can help advise them if they should be getting outside counsel, or if and what other directions and tools that they could possibly have, as it relates human to human, resident to resident. But you shouldn't be part of their negotiation process.
I mean, it's Ward 1 and Ward and the East District.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I mean, you should probably have that conversation with Ali and Carter, like now, to tell them to
Be careful.
to not engage.
Yeah.
That, he'll mess it up.
Or they will have to recuse themselves, which then throws
Yeah,
out
but, all right, well,
situation.
yeah, that would be my advice
Yep.
to do like
No,
now.
that's helpful, a helpful reminder. So that's all that this item was for tonight, was just making sure we had kind of a prep conversation so that we are fully prepared for what you guys need from us.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Maddie. Anything else on this before I close it? Okay, well, that's the end of our deliberative agenda. Now we'll move on to the director's report.
I will, given the time, I will, there's nothing hugely urgent.
Can I pretend to be the director?
Sure. Yes, please.
So we've just recently gone through, all of this condemnation for the Winooski Bridge. We share with you that DPW is bringing forward a similar condemnation process for Cherry Street because it shares the similar federal funding deadline. Also, highly not controversial. All of those are temporary easement rights because we can't reconstruct the sidewalk that is on our property line without going on someone else's property. But that street has a lot bigger business owners that we think that they will just, for their own internal process, exceed the length of time it takes to get a document back. But again, very low risk, but that will come on the heels. and then mix it into the subject.
That'll be after this May timeline or?
We will look to go to the April 27th city council to request to set hearing dates.
Okay.
For early June.
Okay, got it. So that'll be already
They're
on there.
fixed. Yeah,
Okay, any other director report items?
we're working to finalize clean sweep dates. They will be end of April, early May, and we'll have dates for you tomorrow. I just don't wanna say, because we're doing some final coordination tomorrow morning, but please need your help in getting the message out about that. We'll use all the appropriate messaging tools that we have at our disposal. Anything else, Rob, that we should share with the TUC?
We have put in a request to attend the NPAs in April or May so that we can give a briefing on where all of our construction projects for the year stands. So hopefully you'll see us out there.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Great.
Any councilor items?
Hyde Street, I sent you an email, sent you both an email.
Yes,
I don't need to have an answer in this forum, but I do
we've
need,
been working on it and we have a reply.
I
It'll be out
need
tomorrow.
something that would be helpful to my constituent, and as somebody who
Yep.
does ride his bicycle down that street to the Y, it really sucks.
Anything other councilor items? No, this is our last TUC meeting before we reorganize, week after next.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just a quick
Yeah, go ahead.
question. Chapin, any news on my little signal issue from this morning?
It's funny, I have an email half drafted to you as I was here. So yes, Councilor McKnight was asking about the pedestrian heads at Main and Willard. That intersection has suffered many knockdowns, and the conduit in that signal system is non-existent. So our ability to pull new wires through that signal can't happen until we install new conduit. So we are sending our technical folks out again tomorrow to see if there's a short-term fix to cobble together that intersection, but it is going to be in need of a more robust repair. So we will keep you posted.
College and Willard drilling.
We are considering adding this conduit push into the contract for doing the Willard and College intersection.
Okay.
But this is one of those problems that you've experienced that is not a simple light is burned out situation.
Just can't flip the switch and turn it back on. I just, for my other counselors, this is it's an intersection that's very close to Edmonds, and I know that there are a lot of kids who are practicing their independence and walking to school on their own. Hello, here's an Edmonds alum right here. And although I will say my kids don't walk that way, I'm not advocating for this change just for my own benefit. So anyway, it seems important because there's so many young folks who are doing their best to learn to cross the street safely. And if it's not on, they're going to be confused. They're not going to know what to do. And it's a busy intersection as everyone knows. So please.
Yeah, we understand that. We had folks out there today. We'll have folks out there tomorrow to see if there is a short-term fix. This whole system is on its last legs.
Yeah, no, I get that. And that's not your fault. What do we do if you can't fix it though? Like what happens?
Crossing guards.
Crossing guards like all day long?
There are options that we could just pre-time it in. It'll make the vehicle operations a little less efficient, but you can program a pedestrian leading interval at every cycle without activation.
Every minute or something. Okay.
Yeah, every 2 minutes when the cycle will automatically cycle a red, green, yellow, let the side streets go, and then let crossings go. So like we could default fix it, but it will cause other downstream issues. But I agree, pedestrian safety is really key in that location, especially while schools.
Yeah, cool, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for getting back to me so quick, Chapin.
Geez, maybe you could even get a left-hand turning signal there. Okay. On one of those.
No. That promotes the vehicle of miles traveled.
Or camera.
I won't bring up my left-hand turn on Shore Road. I did see someone out there counting cars one day.
You're working.
Hopefully they came up with conclusions about burn in town. But I won't belabor this meeting to talk about that. I just wanted to mention, this is our last meeting as the currently formed TOOC. I don't know, I have an interest in staying on, and once we have a council president selected, if others stand, we'll have some continuity on this committee, I think, but I don't know what others are thinking, but look forward to the next council year.
Staff has worked well with this committee, and if I think that we've learned a lot in working together and are pretty efficient. So hopefully, a good chunk of you will be able to continue.
I think that is my intention.
Mine as well. So
I'm not planning to quit, so.
Ready to quit?
If I quit, it'll be the whole thing, guys. No, I've really enjoyed this. I'm the newest one among you all, and so I've really appreciated I know there's been a little extra time for education with that, which I find so valuable, and this is exciting stuff we're dealing with here. And so, yeah, I would be happy to keep serving if that's the way things go.
Excellent.
Great.
With that, we can tentatively schedule our next meeting if the committee stays the same, and if the fourth Tuesday at 5:30 is a workable time for folks still. Our next meeting would be on the 28th of April at 5:30.
Yes, that works for me.
Yeah. Everybody's checking their calendars. Rob's checking the room.
It does work. I will just say it is hard to I have a hard time having these meetings right after the council meeting, which that is another one.
Is it? I don't know that it is.
Yeah, it is.
There's a council meeting on the
Not on
27th.
the 1st and the 18th.
First, we may have 3 that month because organization isn't real.
I got an 11th. Oh,
Are you looking at April or May?
I'm looking at May.
No,
I'm looking at the 11th.
April is what we're discussing.
Oh, April. Well, I'm in the wrong.
You're 1 month ahead.
I've already it's already in my calendar for April. So
I mean, the 28th does work for me. I just, I think,
is
in the long term, if we can try to adjust, that would be great. But I don't think it's urgent for this meeting if we want to just keep that time.
that's gonna be a hell of a week.
Which one?
The April 20th.
Oh, we got budget stuff too. Yeah,
Budget
that's my
every
only
day.
free night. Thanks,
The
Jane.
20th?
Yeah, so you're talking about like 4 nights in a row.
Yeah, that won't
The
happen.
austere nights of April. Oh.
Austerity nights of April.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
The hard part is the week before is school vacation. So
Yeah.
I don't know what other options there are without going to the beginning of April, and we may not be able to put something together that quickly.
It would be challenging if for some reason any of the members changed to be so close
Yeah,
after organization
right.
day.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll stick with it for this time, and then maybe we can have another conversation.
Yeah, let's put it on the calendar, and then, if things change, I mean, usually sometimes you can share budget meeting attendance with your council colleagues and, report back or whatever. So maybe we can all do that.
Okay, well then we will tentatively continue to plan for the 28th. Well, unless folks hear otherwise, that'll be the date and time, 5:30. We have that meeting then? No, good, excellent. And with no other business, I'll adjourn us at 7:26.
Night, everyone. Thank you.
Right,
Good night.
Bye.